Hello and welcome back to the Master Division of the Intermezzo Championship. Today we will see how the season will conclude, because it's already the last game of the season for me, and considering that there's only one game left, there's actually still a lot possible that could happen for me. If I should win my last game, then I still have chances to win my group and get a promotion to Grandmaster, but in order for that to happen, Danny Boy needs to lose his last game. And if I should lose now the game that we are taking a look at today, then if Arne performs well in his two remaining games, I also could still get relegated. So the situation is quite close, with both of those things still being possible before the last game of the season for me. If I should finish second, then I definitely don't get promoted, and I also should be relatively safe from relegation because I win the tiebreaker against Payada. Only if there's maybe a weird three-way tie situation with Arne and Payada, maybe then there could be something possible. But otherwise, second place should make me at least safe from relegation. And for Arne and Brightfuture, who are the two opponents of this game, for Arne, if he, for him also, basically everything is still possible. He needs to score some points in order to not get relegated, but if he gets the perfect two remaining games with two victories, then he also still has a chance to actually promote to Grandmaster. While for Brightfuture at this point, there's sadly no hope left for him to avoid relegation, but it wasn't clear for most parts of the game, even though, of course, he already didn't have a great start in the first batch of games. But now without further ado, let's take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the second position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that we have some Labs Notchi in H3. There's Bill Gates, Sid Meier, Steve Jobs. We also have Fleming and Chaplin, Blusty Hollywood. We have Pierre, Blusty Internet. There's the Spaceflight for some science Notchi. There's also Churchill for the military. There's no Red Cross. In H2 we have the Ocean Liner Service and Maria Theresa combination. We have James Watt but no railroad. We have James Cook and the Suez Canal, so some big colonization payoff. We have the two science leaders with Newton and Nobel, and Bach as the only culture leader. Napoleon is the only military action leader in H2, Shishka the only one in H1, Barbarossa can help with the strength, Eleanor, Isabella, Barbarossa can all work nicely in a colonization game. We have both Leonardo and Gutenberg, and Saladin is there as well. We have both the Happy Face Lucian Wonders with St. Peter's Basilica and Forbidden City. We have Himeji Castle but no Great Wall, Silk Road but no Universitas, and the Machu Picchu is there. Brightfuture is playing in first position. He just starts by taking the pyramids, secures himself a very strong wonder, should still get a leader at his next turn. Then for me it was relatively clear that I should take the library here, also a very strong wonder, and I can take a card in addition to that, so I think it's definitely better than, for example, just grabbing Engineering Genius or something. The question is, do I want to commit to a leader already, knowing what I get then, or do I maybe want to take that rich land? And I do think both Ashoka and Homer could be very fine picks here. With Homer, I think the library is a fine wonder to have. It doesn't have a happy face already. I want to finish it relatively early. It has not 4 steps, only 3. And with Ashoka, with already having taken a wonder, I can easily pick up a yellow card at my next turn with the spare civil actions, and then hopefully get his bonus fully going at the turn 3. So both of those leaders could be perfectly fine. If I take the rich land, and also if I take one of those leaders, then I think it's very likely that Arne will go for the Engineering Genius plus one of those leaders available for 1 civil action. And so if I take the rich land and Arne goes for that, then it means so that I will get for certain one of Hippocrates or Boudica for 1 civil action at the next turn, which are also both perfectly fine leaders. And with that, at the end, I decided to go for the rich land, because if I now go for Ashoka or Homer, I don't know for certain how nice of a yellow card I can get, while now I get a rich land, which I can use for an additional resource immediately. Together with something like development of crafts and markets, it could mean that I can maybe finish the library a turn earlier. And also Hippocrates and Boudica are just also very fine, maybe even slightly better than Homer and Ashoka. So at the end I was fine going with the rich land here. Now I was interested to see whether Arne will go for Homer or Ashoka, and he decides to go for Ashoka. He knows that he could get the Stonehenge at the next turn, but that wonder could maybe be a bit tricky with Homer, and so he just goes for Ashoka, and the Stonehenge is indeed the only wonder that is remaining for him here. With taking Ashoka, Hippocrates fell down to 1 civil action for Brightfuture, and so he's going for Hippocrates now, meaning for me, I will now go for Boudica. There is actually also Hammurabi revealed, another reason why I thought it could be worth it to maybe take the rich land, as I then also could still have a shot at getting Hammurabi, but with him staying on 3 civil actions, it's just too expensive to take him. On 2, maybe I would have considered taking him, but Boudica is of course also quite a strong leader to get, and so I was happy that I get her now. I can elect her, build a mine, increase my population, so just doing very standard stuff. I draw 2 cards, the Trade Routes Agreement and the Strategic Territory. There's a Suez Canal in the game, so with a colony, maybe if I get cartography or something, I could try to go for a bit of a colonization game. Arne will take the Stonehenge, elects Ashoka, builds a mine, just also a very standard turn, decides against taking those knights for 2 in order to maybe get a Ashoka bonus going or something, but then I think taking the Stonehenge wouldn't have been that easily possible. That means that Brightfuture gets now the knights for 2 civil actions, builds a step of the pyramids, and then takes the urban growth to not go into consumption early, and also having that yellow card available to get the second lab a little bit cheaper. Now it's my turn. I took a science from Boudica, and there is an early iron available for me in the row, and I have actually, thanks to the additional science from Boudica, the chance to go for an iron upgrade already at the next turn, so I think it's probably the best choice to go for the iron here. Of course, there's also a copy of alchemy that I can go for, but also another reason to go for the iron here is that I take the option away from Arne to get the full Ashoka bonus going at his next turn, because now there are only yellow and gray cards left for him. That's another reason to go for the iron, but even without that, I have some additional science from library and potentially also Boudica, so I think the iron just fits very well into my civilization, and I was very happy that I had the chance to take that iron for 2 civil actions here. Then I have 1 civil action left. I could potentially think about taking maybe urban growth, maybe theology to have a happy phase solution. There's beer in the game, however, maybe I would rather hope to maybe get that copy of Bread and Circuses, or maybe just be fine without an H1 happy phase solution, especially with there being both St. Peter's Basilica and the Forbidden City in the game, and I will have some iron production, so I can maybe afford going for one of those wonders. So I think I don't want to go for theology, and while urban growth could be fine, I just don't know if I can use it in the near future, and also if I should end up taking one of those cards. The alchemy falls down to 1 civil action for Arne, and I thought alchemy could be a card that maybe he would like to have, and so I thought it also could be nice for me if I rather let that card stay on 2 civil actions for him, and with that I just build a step of the library here with my last civil action possible, thanks to the rich land that I took at the first turn. I have that resource, and I can now use just 1 civil action already to build that step. That means I don't go into consumption, and can accumulate a little bit more of food. Then I will draw some cards, the Inhabited Territory and the Open Borders Agreement, who had a nice draw, especially the Pact of course, but who knows, with the 2 colonies that I'm having, maybe it could be a possibility to set up a colonization game. Arne Seeds in the Development of Politics is revealed. I get a colonization card, a scientific breakthrough, and a fighting band tactic. And Arne is indeed also willing to take the alchemy for 2 civil actions, so I was happy about my choice of letting that stay on 2 civil actions, and then he has 2 civil actions left, still takes the breakthrough, and then builds the step of the Stonehenge. At the next turn has enough science and resources to build an alchemy directly. Then he reveals the Phalanx tactic. Brightfuture seeds and opens the Development of Warfare. I wasn't too happy to see that, because both of my opponents have a free population while I have not, and with that they will get stronger than me now, Brightfuture now immediately, meaning that I now get the 2 additional resources for the military from Boudica, so that's not really ideal for me. Brightfuture finishes the pyramids this turn, goes for the Silk Road. I think that's a good choice. He has an additional civil action thanks to the pyramids, and generally I think pyramids and Silk Road is quite a nice combination. He then takes the Bread and Circuses for Pierre, and also reveals the Medieval Army tactic already. Now it is my turn. Normally I would have probably just offered the open borders agreement here, but I have a bit of an issue here, and that is that, as said, I will get the 2 additional resources for the military from Boudica, and I have only 4 food at the moment, meaning I'm missing 1 food to increase my population 2 times, which is required in order for me to have a free population to put into warriors to at least make use out of those resources. And with that, I thought it should be worth pushing because there are just a lot of developments that could help me in that regard: settlement, agriculture, markets, trade routes, civil life, and very likely also planning. So I thought it should be worth a shot. Then the question is, of course, what do I want to push into the deck? I could maybe try to already start going for some colonies here. Maybe that could be fine. I have the open borders agreement that I can offer soon. I have the library to keep more cards in hand. But at that point I maybe was a little bit too afraid to commit to a colony already, because if one of my opponents wins it, it could also just set them up nicely in order to for a Suez Canal. I do think it could be worth the gamble here, just seeding a colony. At the end I went with the scientific breakthrough. I have the library, so I will at least get 3 science out of that. There's of course the danger that Arne might get even more, but he has a lot of science to work with anyway with the Stonehenge, and so at the end I seeded the scientific breakthrough here. And I was happy to see that there is indeed one of the developments revealed that helps me with my Boudica resource issue, and the development of civil life I can now very nicely use to increase my population. At a 1 food discount I can increase my population another time. I will reveal the warrior, I will reveal the fighting band tactic, just making sure that I'm a little bit stronger again, making it more likely that I can choose what I want to take from Boudica at the next turn. And then I have 3 civil actions left, and I decided to just get 1 iron upgrade going and take the cultural heritage. I could have thought about taking this copy of alchemy here, especially with having seeded the scientific breakthrough, but for now I just want to focus on upgrading my mines and finishing the library anyway, and then maybe the scientific breakthrough will be revealed anyway before I can start going into alchemies. And also without the alchemy, hopefully I will find some nice things to invest into. For example, one of those wonders, now that I have some iron production going, and with that I just really wanted to have the science that I can get without any further investment, apart of course from the 1 civil action that I need to play it with the cultural heritage. I then keep the open borders agreement and a colonization card in hand, discarding my colonies. Now it's Arne's turn. He takes the free warrior, increases his population, develops the alchemy, builds 1, has now some nice science production going, and then takes the drama to at least again produce 1 resource with Ashoka. So far he didn't manage to get the food production going, but at least a little bit of additional resource production. Brightfuture has now the chance to actually get Jan Žižka for 1 civil action. He wants to get a new leader anyway with having Hippocrates, and with that, I think going for Jan Žižka should be a good choice. He builds the step of the Silk Road here, increases his population. Thanks to the step of the Silk Road, he can then use the urban growth immediately with the Silk Road bonus, can build that 2nd lab, takes the breakthrough, which will score him 3 science with the Silk Road. Now it is my turn, and this turn I offer the open borders agreement. I will offer it to Arne because Brightfuture has Jan Žižka, and he has the medieval army tactic revealed right now, but there's also the phalanx tactic available to copy for him, and then if he builds 2 knights, he has quite some strength potential, so I would be a bit afraid of having the open borders agreement with him, and rather went for it with Arne. It's also not ideal because I thought it could be that Arne wants to go for Barbarossa here, and then the additional military action actually helps him quite a bit as well. So maybe I could have still offered it to Brightfuture, but the prospect of him having maybe 2 phalanx tactics at some point at the end made me a bit too afraid. However, it probably will still take a while until he can go for that, of course depending also a little bit on the developments, so maybe I could have also offered it to him, but it definitely also could have backfired quite heavily, and so I felt a bit safer with offering it to Arne. This turn I can take a resource from Boudica. The flexibility is quite nice here because that means that I can finish the library, get some science production going. I could have also gone for another iron upgrade, but only 1, and then I just rather wanted to complete my wonder here. Normally, maybe I would have liked to take the Rich Land now, because that would actually allow me to fully complete my iron upgrades already at the next turn, and then I could maybe take Barbarossa together with the Rich Land, who can work nicely as a transitional leader, even though I probably can't easily get more than one activation out of him. But I could also take this copy of Irrigation, for example. There's an Ocean Liner service in the game. So normally I probably would like to do something like this, but here at the end I decided to go for the Swordsman, because I was a bit worried about the military situation. Maybe that's an overreaction, but it's not only to make sure that I have something to invest into my military, but also to make sure that I could use Boudica's military resources in case I need them, or in case I get them already at the next turn. For example, if Brightfuture decides to build a knight already, then I could now develop the swordsman and get 2 upgrades from warriors to swordsman for free. Otherwise, it could just be that I can't use those resources at all. And also, I just make sure that I have a military technology available. Still, it's a bit expensive. Maybe I could have just hoped that a second copy of Swordsman could be there, or a copy of Knight. It's not guaranteed that Brightfuture will increase his strength already. Maybe he wants to do some other investments instead. So I'm not certain here if it is really worth it to pick the Swordsman for 2, but it's maybe a bit of a safety pick. I then draw another colonization card, the Immigration under Cultural Influence. Arne takes the Irrigation, takes Barbarossa. I think that makes sense for him. He now starts producing some additional food with Ashoka, and with that should be able to go for some Barbarossa activations. He then also builds a Step of the Stonehenge using the Engineering Genius, can maybe finish that wonder at the next turn. Now it's Brightfuture's turn. He will develop the Bread and Circuses, actually. An interesting choice. There could still be development of religion revealed, so it's a bit of a commitment to develop that already, and he will also build one. Not sure if that is really needed at that point already. He will then build one, takes the Frugality, and with the Frugality and not increasing his population, he can make sure to get 2 more population, and then of course at some point the 2 happy faces from the Bread and Circus will be very relevant, because those will allow him to put both of the population that he will get with the Frugality into the military, or anywhere he would like to, but probably the military, meaning he can maybe just spend some actions already this turn to make sure to have those happy faces, and then the next turn he can maybe start building up some military. Then he has 2 civil actions left, and here he decides to just develop and develop the masonry, which will be nice with the Silk Road. However, he did a little bit of a turn order mistake here, because now, of course, he should have developed the masonry before building that arena, saving 1 resource. He still would be out of corruption. Probably it was one of those turns where you just think about what actions do I want to do for certain, and then you think about, okay, what do I do with the remaining actions, and then you think about the remaining actions, think, okay, I can develop the masonry, but then forgetting about that the discount actually could already have been used this turn, so that this was an oversight here by Brightfuture, and costs him 1 resource here. He will then copy the Phalanx tactic, which will be the better one for him, with already having 2 warriors. He doesn't get stronger than me, meaning I can choose what to take from Boudica, and I will also do that, taking a science, meaning that I can actually take and develop the Code of Laws this turn, which I think is strong for me. I hopefully have enough science to support it, especially with the scientific breakthrough coming, but it's also a little bit of a denial from Arne, who could easily invest into the Code of Laws at his turn. There will be another copy coming down the road. It's not certain if Brightfuture will take it or not, but at least they delay it maybe a little bit, how quickly Arne can get that going, and it also, I think, is a useful technology for myself. There's also a monarchy together with the cultural heritage. I also could have developed that this turn, but I have the open borders agreement, and with that thought it could be fine to maybe wait for an H2 government form. So I go for the Code of Laws, I upgrade 1 of my mines, then I have 1 civil action left. I could potentially take some of those cards. I could take the dramas, there's Bach, no Marlene though, but Chaplin, Fleming, the Hollywood, so maybe having the drama could be quite fine. Or I could maybe take the Urban Growth, maybe the Monarchy. There are some fine cards to take. At the end I decided to just play the Cultural Heritage here. The thing is, I still need a new leader, and my opponents have already some leaders. Probably Saladin might be discarded anyway, also if I don't take any of those cards, but at least there's a chance that if Arne takes none of those cards in front of Saladin, neither Urban Growth nor Swordsman, and at least that's a possibility, that I might get Saladin at the next turn, who could be a strong leader, because Gutenberg with the Alchemy's gone is not that great. I could then go for Isabella, she also might be fine, but I've discarded some colonies, so I don't know how nicely I can make use out of her colonization ability. So if I had the choice, I probably would prefer Saladin over Isabella. It certainly also could have been an idea too, instead of going for Code of Laws, I could have gone for Saladin here, taking and electing him already and getting my 5th civil action like that instead of the Code of Laws. But at the end I decided I, on one hand, want to deny the Code of Laws from Arne, and at least there's a chance that I might still get Saladin for cheap at my next turn. Yeah, it could have been also an idea, but Isabella could also be somewhat fine, and together with the Code of Laws I still would have the additional civil action. So at the end I decided to take none of those cards, just keeping the chance alive that maybe Saladin could be available for me at the next turn, and those cards could be useful, but are also maybe all not really that much necessary for me. I can actually keep all of my cards in hand thanks to the library. I will draw some cards, one of them being the reds. Arne can't go for the Code of Laws this turn, instead goes for the Monarchy, finishes the Stonehenge, and then he has 1 civil action left, and he will use that civil action to sadly take the Swordsman, which I guess makes sense. He doesn't know whether he gets that copy of Knights, and so he kinda needs to pick the Swordsman here to have something to increase his military. With that, Saladin will be discarded before my next turn. There would also be Eleanor left, a leader that I also potentially would like to have quite a bit, but she isn't showing, so my next turn I might just go for Isabella. Brightfuture seeds, the development of religion is revealed. He misses out on it, but he has the arena, and with Pierre it could just be perfectly fine to have arenas going. I have a free population, so I can take the free religion. Same is true for Arne. Brightfuture this turn can use the frugality with the Silk Road bonus, can easily get 2 more population out, takes a copy of reserves and urban growth, so has more yellow cards to work with for the Silk Road, develops the knights, builds 1, is going up to 8 strength, and at the next turn can even build another knight, and is then looking quite threatening. Now it is my turn, and I thought I just kinda have to push the reds here, because I can increase my population this turn, meaning I will be very low on food. Brightfuture isn't losing that much, but Arne has a bunch of food saved up. He has Barbarossa. Maybe he will just spend all of the food very quickly, but nonetheless with Barbarossa I thought those reds could potentially do quite some damage to him. So I seeded them, the development of planning is revealed, and the options for that were development of crafts, science or trade routes. At the end I went with science, as I think science is quite probably the most valuable resource for me here, and the one food that I would get from something like development of trade routes would just be lost to the reds very likely, or I would just be lying around for a while. So I think the development of science is probably the best choice here. I then will this turn go for Isabella as a replacement for Boudica. Then again, I'm not certain about my actions here, because I could just go for the swordsman, try to go for a bit of an infantry setup, but I actually rather went for the knights here, and I'm not certain if it's really worth the investment of the additional civil actions. Also, I will not be able to go for an iron upgrade here. Yeah, so I'm not sure. If I would have gone for the swordsman, maybe I wouldn't have that much else to do with the remaining civil actions. I guess I could of course go for that upgrade, and it already would be quite strong, but I maybe don't necessarily need any of those cards available for 1 civil action. At least I also deny those knights from Arne, who could maybe then go into knights instead of swordsman. With having knights, the transition into H2 tactics is a bit easier. But I'm not sure if it was really worth the investment for the additional civil actions here. Also, as you can see, when I now lose the 2 yellow tokens to the end of the age, I will actually have a bit of an uprising issue here. And yeah, I think there's not that much that I could do about it, because I do think I need 3 units into the military soon. I've also, by the way, copied a tactic here, going up to 7 strength at least. Of course, now I at least have the option to go for both swordsmen and knights in case I really want to fight for those strength events, but that would also be quite a heavy investment. I have an uprising issue. I was hoping that I might get a chance to take and finish St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn, which I think would be quite strong. If Arne takes Rich Land and Theology though, then the St. Peter's Basilica will be discarded in Brightfuture's turn, or of course he could just take the St. Peter's Basilica for himself, but maybe that is a bit expensive for him in the situation. Brightfuture can't really take it away with having the Silk Road still lying around. So that could be taken away. If it is taken away, I might just have to delete something, but I just also think I need units into the military, three of them, at least three of them, with Brightfuture maybe going for another knight soon, and at least I have now, as said, the option to maybe go for swordsman on top of those knights, because with Brightfuture having Jan Shishka and being able to build another knight soon, things could potentially get a bit dangerous. So now it's Arne's turn. First of all, H2 will start, Arne will lose Ashoka. I do think that might have been actually also another reason for me to take those knights. I think I remember something here, because thanks to taking 2 cards from the row, like I did during this turn, the H did actually end. So I think without taking the knights, I kind of would need to take a card that I don't really need in order to end the H, while with the knights it just happened somewhat naturally, meaning that now Arne loses the civil action with not being able to replace Ashoka. I do think that was actually also part of the reasoning with going for the knights here. Arne will this turn and go for swordsman, can use 2 Barbarossa activations immediately, so sadly he did now use a bunch of food. It doesn't get hit by the reds that much unless he gets some irrigations going soon. Goes for the Code of Laws, takes the Rich Land, goes for another upgrade, making him the strongest, and sadly he will also take the Theology, a card that certainly could be useful for him, just being able to upgrade at religion, but maybe he also saw that I would really like to get the St. Peter's Basilica at my next turn and just maybe wants to deny that from me here. Now it's Brightfuture's turn, he seeds, and sadly I immediately get punished here for being the weakest. Remembers me a little bit of the last game. I think there that Uncertain Borders was the top event of the first H1 event deck as well. Sadly I lose a yellow token immediately, that's certainly not great, but no, I mean I'm the weakest, I'm the least well prepared for strength events, and so that's of course what can happen. Brightfuture pays actually quite a lot of civil actions to make sure to get the selective breeding here, also takes the engineering genius. Yeah, at my turn the option of taking and finishing St. Peter's Basilica is sadly gone, and here, as the strength situation looks somewhat dangerous, I decided to go for the Amici Castle instead. I can take and finish it, just making me a bit safer, increasing my culture reduction by a little bit. When we take a look at the overview, at least maybe I will get a little bit of a culture lead over the next few turns, and then I have 1 civil action left that I can use to destroy this mine. Maybe I could have disbanded Avalry and revealed the medieval army tactic, but maybe Brightfuture could just try an aggression and I might have to sacrifice then, because I would be dropping down to 7 strength, so the 2 defense cards are not enough to defend against an aggression. So at the end I destroyed this mine. At least I have still 5 resource production thanks to Isabella, and yeah, but I certainly would have preferred to get the St. Peter's Basilica here. Then I could have just put this repopulation actually into knights, maybe going for the medieval army tactic at some point. And that also would have helped me with the strength, and I wouldn't have to delete something, but at least the Amici Castle might just make me a bit safer here. Sadly I can't take this constitutional monarchy like this, but Arne has already monarchy. Brightfuture doesn't have the science to get into it immediately. I also don't have the science to get into it immediately, so I thought it could be fine to just wait for another copy of an H2 government form. I draw some cards here, another colonization card, so if there's some colonies coming, I might have some good chances to win them actually. For now there's no colony revealed, a scientific breakthrough instead, which gives me 3 additional science at least. Arne gets the most science out of that. He used Barbarossa now for 2 activations at his last turn. Now he doesn't really have a lot of food left, and he uses that to just get a new leader going immediately, and that leader is James Watt. He can get 1 coal upgrade going, at the next turn can even get 2 more coal upgrades going, so with that he can get his resource production going extremely quickly. Used Barbarossa very, very nicely as a transitional leader, only had him for 1 turn, got 2 activations out of him, basically 2 civil actions, 2 resources and 2 food, and now immediately gets a new leader going. Of course, once he has completed those upgrades, James Watt might not be doing that much for a while, but especially if he also gets the selective breeding, The overall value is still a lot, but even if he only gets coal, just getting those mines going quicker gives him quite a boost and helps him snowballing into other benefits. He then upgrades another warrior to swordsman to make sure to not be the weakest. Now it is Brightfuture's turn. He offers the scientific cooperation to me, and I accepted this. He, for the moment, doesn't have the most science saved up. He, even with getting the discount, can't go into the constitutional monarchy. I have a bit more science saved up. However, Brightfuture has now, of course, the option to get into scientific method. However, I saw that if he goes into that, at least he leaves the constitutional monarchy to me. And unless he develops both selective breeding and scientific method, which he could do, but then he would either miss out on a very strong yellow card. That's the thing that he would miss out on with the Silk Road. It would be quite costly for him. So I was hoping that at least I will only have to pay one science with the pact during his turn, meaning I could actually go for the common one turn earlier than I normally would have. And while it's a big technology, meaning I only get a discount for one big technology, it still gives me quite a big of boost. And if I then afterwards realize that the pact is maybe to my disadvantage, I still have always the option to cancel it. So I accepted this pact and also was quite happy that I have the chance to get that. Brightfuture develops the scientific method, goes for an upgrade very cheaply with the urban growth with the Silk Road bonus, and then indeed it doesn't develop the selective breeding, instead wants to make sure to have the breakthrough. Interestingly, the breakthrough, I do think the reserves also could be a strong card for him, but now that he has the scientific cooperation pact with me, maybe he didn't want to leave the breakthrough available for me. Now it is my turn, and thanks to the Scientific Cooperation Pact, I can get into the Conmon immediately this turn. Afterwards I'm relatively low in science, but it's still quite a nice of a boost. There are some interesting wonders that I could maybe get into, and so I thought I'd definitely have to do that. I think I also certainly have to take the selective breeding here. Brightfuture has already taken the first copy, Arne has James Sword, he has the irrigation in hand, but selective breeding just basically costs the same as irrigation in both science and resource cost. But of course the selective breeding would be a lot stronger for him, and also I would then very likely miss out on a food solution and would be very dependent on the ocean liner service. So I think that's also a card that I kind of need to secure for myself here. Rifleman of course also could have been interesting, but at least I have the swordsman available as an infantry technology. Then I have 2 civil actions left, and I think the best here is probably to take 2 cards from the 1 civil action area. I could just take the 2 yellow cards, but I could also consider going for Napoleon here. Napoleon would just bump my strength immediately up to 13. I wouldn't be the weakest any longer. And maybe I would have gone for Napoleon if he just would have given me 1 more strength, or if maybe Brightfuture would have had 1 less strength because of going for Napoleon. Would have made a difference here between being weakest or strongest. I do think I might have been willing to go for him, but with it only being to avoid being the weakest, I, at the end, rather wanted to take those 2 strong yellow cards. I thought in my position with now being low in science, I really want to get a wonder going, so the Engineering Genius could be very helpful for that, and the reserves also just a strong card to get for me. Maria Theresa for now probably not being the ideal leader to take. And so I skipped Napoleon here, especially also with maybe not needing the military action really that much for the moment. And with that I keep the option open for example, Nobel, if I get Opera Bach, if I get Scientific Method Newton. So there are still some potentially strong leaders left for me. Nonetheless, Napoleon could have made it that I avoid being the weakest, and if there wouldn't be an interesting other card to take, for example, if there would be, instead of Engineering Genius and reserves, Engineering Genius and some sort of technology that I don't really need, then also I might have just gone for Napoleon, but with the option of just taking 2 strong yellow cards at the end, I decided against going for Napoleon here. I draw some cards, the Ravages of Time and the Civil Unrest, Arne Seeds, and immediately maybe I started to regret it a little bit not having gone for Napoleon. The border conflict is revealed, I have to destroy something during my turn while Brightfuture gets 3 additional resources. Arne this turn has the chance to get the Ocean Liner. He missed out on both copies of Selective Breeding, so I think the Ocean Liner service is just a very strong technology for him, and so he a wonder for him, and the architecture he can use very nicely on it, so I think it's certainly worth it to take it even from the 3 civil action area. Brightfuture Seeds, the reds are revealed. So everyone loses a little bit of food, but I think no one really gets hit by that a lot here. Brightfuture this turn will develop the selective breeding with the Silk Road bonus, builds then some steps in the Silk Road, finishes that wonder, takes the efficient upgrade and the urban growth, so gets a lot of resources from the yellow cards, can use them with the Silk Road bonus again. He has now 13 signs saved up, so during this turn I could potentially consider just cancelling the Scientific Cooperation Pact. I could potentially also consider cancelling the Open Borders Agreement Pact, but Arne would still draw 3 cards as he probably doesn't want to build any military right now, so I think I can also just keep it. Maybe I would have cancelled the Scientific Cooperation Pact, at least it would have given me the Conmon 1 turn earlier, because Brightfuture is looking like he can go for a bunch of technologies. But this turn it's a bit tricky for me to spend my civil actions anyway, and I thought I will at the end just go for that revolutionary idea. And with having that revolutionary idea and with actually being able to take some more technologies that I might want to develop soon, like riflemen, cannons, I actually will also take the architecture in hand. I thought that actually the pact could still prove to be useful for me, and I decided to keep it. Instead I seeded the Ravages of Time into the deck. Maybe a little bit questionable to seed that here. At least I know exactly when it will be coming. I will lose the library, which is somewhat fine, even though with the Scientific Cooperation Pact maybe also not ideal, especially also if it is revealed relatively early. But I thought Arne could, at this, how it's looking at the moment, could maybe miss the happy face from the Stonehenge quite a bit, while Brightfuture maybe could be fine with losing the pyramids, especially if he gets an H2 government form. But on the other hand, he has the Silk Road, so every additional civil action could actually prove to be quite useful for him if it maybe means grabbing an additional yellow card or something. So I, at the end, seeded the Ravages of Time here, at least also having a little bit of knowledge about the next event deck. And sadly, there's the Foray revealed, so with both the border conflict and the Foray, I do think in hindsight I would have liked to go for Napoleon, but the thing is, of course, I didn't have knowledge whether such events were in there or not. Of course, Brightfuture went for Jančiška, so it was definitely possible or maybe likely that some strength events were coming, and yeah, but with those yellow cards I decided against it at the end, which with those 2 events being immediately revealed afterwards, I then maybe regretted a little bit. I need to destroy something now also from the border conflict. I decided to destroy religion here. And then this turn I can get some important military techs. I can take the cannons, the riflemen. As said, I think I really need the revolutionary idea here, and with the revolutionary idea I might be able to even potentially go for 2 technologies at the next turn. I also was eyeing the Statue of Liberty that is coming down the road with the Engineering Genius. I think that could be a fine wonder to finish. My last civil action maybe is a little bit questionable, but also is maybe fine, because I take the architecture here. I could have also taken the organized religion, and I certainly will need a happy face solution. But the architecture just has a lot of potential, not necessarily that much for saving civil actions, because if I should indeed go for the Statue of Liberty, which I thought should be likely available for me, even though Brightfuture with the Engineering Genius 1 could maybe consider taking it, but I thought there's a good chance that it might be available for me, and then I can just use the Engineering Genius, so I don't use any civil actions. I don't save any civil actions if I go for the architecture, but nonetheless I haven't built any urban buildings yet, so there's the chance that the architecture might save me quite a bit of resources over the course of the game. However, the second copy of Organized Religion is already in the row. There's a chance that it might be discarded before my next turn, so it could be a bit tricky with the Happy Face solution, but then again, if I should get the statue, I get a little bit of help from my happy faces already, and there's still a copy of Team Sports left, and now that I had to destroy my religion, I thought it could maybe be better if I should get Team Sports with Pierre, the player in front of me. Brightfuture has already the bread and circuses, and with that, I at the end think it's maybe fine to take the architecture here, so it's just a technology that has a lot of potential, and Arne has already the other copy, so if I don't take it, I miss out on it completely. And so at the end I was fine taking the risk, but if I at the end get denied a happy face solution, it certainly could turn out to be a bit awkward. I will draw some cards, the Iconoclasm, International Negotiations and the Raid. Arne seeds, and the new deposits are revealed. At least they gain 5 additional resources. Arne develops the architecture. This turn has lots of resources to work with, can easily finish the ocean liner. Takes and develops the navigation, interestingly, indicating that there are some colonies coming, and then upgrades his last coal mine with the James Watt discount. Also, he builds an additional swordsman, making sure that he is the strongest, maybe also making sure that he can bid a little bit more for some colonies. Brightfuture seeds. And there's indeed immediately the first colony revealed. I was willing to bid quite a lot, I think only 1 unit, but I have a lot of resources saved up, so I think I was willing to bid a knight, my cards, and 3 resources even. Designs with the scientific operation could just be very useful, the yellow token as well. Maybe it would be a bit expensive, but at least at the end I made Arne pay a little bit more. He has to actually send 2 swordsmen away now, which is quite a heavy price. Suez Canal is already out. So it's just for the value of the colony, maybe you can make a transition, but it feels a little bit expensive. Brightfuture this turn will go for the Republic, develops it, goes for 2 selective breeding upgrades, goes for another upgrade to his labs, takes the rich land, and thanks to having rich land and efficient upgrade in hand, he can, if he should get 1 copy of coal at the next turn, go for 2 upgrades to coal actually, despite only having 6 resources saved up, thanks to those yellow cards. Now it is my turn. I am not the weakest, I could potentially push an event, but for now I didn't know for certain if those events would be useful. Civil unrest I think would be way too risky, especially because I will actually skip the organized religion this turn. It isn't that easy for me to take that one. So civil unrest is not that great, international negotiations, I don't have an H2 tactic, is not that great, immigration with not having a happy face solution is not that great, and iconoclasm maybe could be somewhat fine, maybe I can play around it, but Arne has James Watt, who maybe isn't doing anything for him anyway, unless he gets McEgg or oil early, so at the end this point I didn't want to commit to any of those events. Maybe I could have just played an aggression against Arne here then with the open borders agreement that I'm having with him. I think I might actually discard an aggression at the end of my turn. I won't be using any military actions. I think I should have actually done that here. I think that was an oversight that I realized immediately after ending the turn. So yeah, if you are having some overflow military actions and you would discard an aggression anyway, of course you should just use it, but it's also easy to overlook as the aggression only does anything because of having this open borders agreement, and it's also probably not the worst thing. Probably it wouldn't hurt him that much to discard 2 cards here. Then this turn I will go for the Statue of Liberty. I think that will just help me. I lost a yellow token early on because of the uncertain borders. I won't take the organized religion like this, but at least I will get a bit of help from my happy faces, so it maybe allows myself to take the risk on waiting for the team sports for Pierre. And so I take the Statue of Liberty here. I thought about if I maybe still want to just go for 2 selective breeding upgrades, get some food production going first instead of finishing the statue. But at the end I decided to finish the statue because not only get I the additional culture production, I get additional food production thanks to getting those yellow tokens back into this area, but now thanks to the yellow tokens I actually have a happy population again, and I can use that. First of all, I will go for Nobel this turn, and I think the additional science will be very helpful for me, and also is another reason why I think I should keep the scientific operation pact, which again I potentially could have cancelled, but yeah, with the revolutionary and all of those techs that I want to develop, even though I don't develop any right now, I was hoping that Brightfuture won't cancel the pact. Of course he might also use the pact very nicely, but I might soon go for selective breeding, Ralphman, architecture, so yeah, then I also can really save a lot of science, and then I can rebuild that mine, just making sure to go back up to 6 resource production. Playing on 4 resource production during H3 can be somewhat tricky, and so I was willing to go for that investment here. And yeah, I think Nobel just being a useful leader for me, but with spending all of those civil actions, I don't have the civil actions left to maybe take the organized religion as a safety pick, and now I'm a bit dependent on the team sports. I draw the international trade agreement here, which is a nice pact to have. Arne seeds, and another colony is revealed, the vast territory 1. I was willing to bid one knight and make cards, but I also didn't want to be too much in danger of an aggression. At the end, Arne is again able to win it, but at least again he has to send 2 swordsmen away. So for now he is quite weak, but he also has a very healthy yellow bank right now, and he can increase his population 2 times, 1 time normally, 1 time with the ocean liner service, build some swordsmen, develops the irrigation to have that available to maybe fix this famine at some point, takes the strategy, the cannons, and the wave of nationalism. Now it's Brightfuture's turn. He seeds, the Crusades are revealed, at least I'm not the weakest any longer, so I don't lose any culture to that. Brightfuture then goes for Newton, who I think is very strong for me in the situation. He has lots of science production, he has the Scientific Cooperation Pact, so he can save some science with going for Newton, and I was certainly a bit worried if maybe the pact is now ending up just being too much in his favor. But I also don't want to cancel it, because now I waited some turns with developing techs, and now I can maybe develop quite a bunch of them in one go. He then takes the cavalryman, the justice system. He will actually develop the justice system, has again 2 civil actions left, plays the reserves, takes the opera, has taken a lot of cards from the row, is now playing a 9 civil action. I was not too happy about the Ravages of Time coming now, because I think both opponents are very nicely prepared now for the loss of their HA wonders, so I think it might actually be the worst for me right now. Brightfuture has now 9 civil actions, and Newton, so losing 1 and gaining 2 culture production instead is maybe completely fine for him, and Arne has won that many additional yellow tokens that losing the happy face from the Stonehenge, at least for now, it doesn't really hurt him that much, so I was not too happy about the Ravages of losing the library to the Ravages of Time here. I could have seeded during my turn, but again I was not too certain which event I should push. I mean, removing Newton from Brightfuture could be fine, but again Arne might not get hurt that much with losing James Watt. And so instead I offered the International Trade Agreement. I offered it to Brightfuture. It was a close call for me. I thought about both of their positions and which position might be the favorable one. And maybe we can talk about it a little bit more at the end of Arne's turn, when we maybe want to take a look at the overview anyway. I do think Brightfuture has the economical advantage here, but he also missed out on the strategy, stuck on 2 military actions as only knights and hussars, and I do think he has a big weak spot here on Arne with the ocean liner service, and the strategy might be able to exploit that. And despite Brightfuture looking like he has just some very strong production going, tons of civil actions, I thought it could be a very relevant blind spot or a weak spot, and so with that I thought the position is maybe relatively equally strong, and then I offered the pack to Brightfuture, also because of standing reasons, because at this point Brightfuture was not looking like he has any chances to come back in the standings, while Arne potentially could still get very close to me. Then it's my turn, and this turn I can finally develop some technologies. First of all, I want to get some food production going. I can go for some upgrades to selective breeding. Then I also decided to develop the Rifleman, at least go for 1 upgrade using the 1 free military action that I'm having, getting a bit stronger, and making sure to develop the Rifleman. Maybe I should play it safe here, just take the team sports, because the thing is, Arne will now lose to theology, and maybe could also take the team sports. Brightfuture has that many civil actions that he might just deny the team sports, and then I might just end up having no happy face solution at all. It doesn't. At the next turn, when I lose the yellow tokens, can just increase my population to avoid an uprising issue. And at the end I decided to actually take the cavalryman, so that I'm prepared for H3 tactics. I haven't drawn an H2 tactic for now, so having that available for H3 tactics could be important, especially modern army would be very nice for me now. And then I decided to use the remaining civil actions to develop the architecture, so this turn at least I used the Scientific Cooperation Pact 3 times, removing a little bit of science from Brightfuture, and I played Revolutionary Idea before I developed that architecture. Of course, it's a bit of a commitment developing that architecture, but I thought now that I have used the pact that many times, maybe the next turn I could consider cancelling the pact, depending on how much Brightfuture will use the pact at his next turn, and what cards I maybe can take from the row. So I thought maybe it could be nice to use it as much as I can this turn. I soon will maybe need the architecture, either if I go for team sports or any other urban buildings. and so at the end I developed it already, but maybe instead of taking Cavalryman and developing that plus playing Rev Idea, I maybe could have just taken the team sports, which would be the safer pick. But there is Chaplin, there's Steve Jobs, and there's also still a copy of Scientific Method coming. There are 2 copies of Professional Sports, and maybe I can allow myself to take that risk with not immediately having an uprising issue. If I would have an uprising issue that I could only fix by deleting something, of course I need to take the team sports, but like this I thought maybe I can allow myself the luxury to not commit 3 civil actions into team sports here. I will get 3 draws. And I was very happy about those draws. Another colonization card, so now if there are even more colonies coming, I could really have a shot at winning one of those. And also I have the classic army tactic, which works very nicely with the setup that I'm having and helps me just staying competitive in strength. Age 3 starts right now. Arne will go for the Gremlin, just finishes it very efficiently with the architecture. Now, losing the happy face from the Stonehenge might be a bit bad for him, however, though, because he also won't take the team sports, instead takes the Rifleman and the efficient upgrade, builds another swordsman, making sure to not be the weakest. And then it's the end of his turn, and we can maybe take a quick look at the overview. I have a small culture lead, also thanks to the statue, or mainly because of my wonders. All of my culture production at this point is coming from my wonders. But Brightfuture is only close behind me. Arne is a little bit more behind, but has some solid culture production right now that he went for the Kremlin. Brightfuture, of course, has a booming economy, lots of science production, strong resource production, strong food production, lots of civil actions. But as said, he has a weak spot in the military. If he gets the military theory early, that could be an extremely big help for him, but if not, then there's certainly the possibility that he could be a bit vulnerable, and Arne has lots of population to work with the ocean liner. So overall, I think it's a relatively balanced situation here. I really need to make sure to get a happy face solution right now. If I miss out on that for some turns, then that could be quite a disadvantage for me, but otherwise I have a solid economy, but have spent now a lot of science, so I will have to see what I can do with this. At least for now I am in the culture lead and also in the strength lead, so those are some advantages. So overall I think a position where every player still can play for the win, and it might depend on certain cards, like a happy face solution for me, as military theory for Brightfuture, how maybe the game will be continuing, and or how the strength of the position will change. Brightfuture seeds, the Ravages of Time is revealed. He will now increase his culture production by getting the pyramids removed, which I think is somewhat fine for him. He develops the Cavalryman for 3 with Newton, goes for some upgrades, takes the rockets, just making sure to maybe have some more options for the military. And as you can see, he is actually taking the team spots here, and I do think it's a denial that is worth it for him. Of course, maybe I will get a new happy face technology relatively soon, but he first of all maybe makes it that he has less that Pierre is less contested, and he just makes sure to have caused me some issues, especially with Arne. Now losing the happy face from Stonehenge also still really needs a happy face solution, so those happy face solutions might be quite contested right now, and maybe I will regret not having taken the team sports for 3, or early on having taken the organized religion maybe instead of the architecture. Brightfuture takes the team sports, the patriotism, the frugality, and another frugality. At my turn, I again could have potentially just cancelled the Scientific Cooperation Pact, but I decided against it. First of all, I'm the strongest, so I kind of wanted to seed the international negotiations into the deck. With the classic army tactic, I felt comfortable enough doing that. And also there's this revolutionary deal which I can take, which again gave me some hope that hopefully I will still also get some technologies developed and can make use out of the pact. Even though now with Brightfuture having that much science, breakthrough, Newton, I was worried that I might regret this decision, but I at the end kept the pact and seeded. The event revealed is the strategic territory. At this point I wasn't willing to bid more than 1 unit. Maybe I could have, but I just recently upgraded my food production, so I do think I have to be a bit careful about that, and at least I can still bid reasonably high with only a rifleman and 3 cards, and make Arne pay a little bit more. Again, he has to send 2 swordsmen away, but gets 5 H3 draws now, which could be extremely valuable for him. I lose the library this turn, at least it increases my culture production by a little bit. I can increase my population to fix an uprising issue. And as you can see, there is actually a copy of Professional Sports in the row for me, and I thought I kinda definitely have to take that. I still considered not taking it. And there are maybe some other options. For example, I could go for 2 upgrades to Scientific Method and go for Steve Jobs, maybe going for those 2 upgrades, taking him in hand. But then I miss out on those yellow cards, which I think would be quite costly. I didn't like that too much. I thought about just ignoring the Professional Sports, going for some Scientific Method upgrades. There's Bill Gates at my on the game. And there's still Chaplin that I could maybe get. However, the first copy of Movies is gone before my next turn. So I kind of really would have liked to get into Scientific Method here with having the Scientific Operation packed, but at the end I couldn't justify not taking the Professional Sports here. It will be an extremely strong technology for me. It makes it that I'm potentially prepared for Pierre and the internet, and also, as said, Arne also really needs a happy face solution, so I just leave him that available. He might then take it, and then Brightfuture just maybe needs to go for another hate draft, and I might have some big happy face issues for the rest of the game. So here I just took the Professional Sports, which I'm sadly missing 1 science to develop already this turn. I can then take the Revolutionary Idea. I also took the military build-up, and with the last civil action I went for upgrading a warrior, just making use out of my free military action, and then played the reserves, I think, for resources. I think I thought about building a religion here. That would have got me out of corruption, at least it would have increased my culture production by a little bit. But when I go for Professional Sports, I really don't need a happy face, and I'm still somewhat tight on population. Arne just won the strategic territory. If he has drawn some strong military cards, he could go for a bit of a military push, and then I might just need some population into the military, and I might not be able to afford that religion at this point, so I decided to rather just accept corruption and use my civil action already to play the reserves. I get 3 draws here. Impact of Happiness, now that I have the Professional Sports, could be fine. Impact of Colonies isn't really that great, but at least nice to know that my opponents won't have it. Arne Seeds, the developed territory is revealed. Maybe this time he wasn't willing to send 2 swordsmen again, and I'm able to win it for 1 unit. I again wasn't willing to bid more, but for 1 unit I thought that yellow tokens plus the additional science is quite useful for me. And also hopefully helps me maybe making more use out of the Scientific Operation Pact. Arne this turn will replace James Watt, which I think makes sense. He isn't doing anything for him right now. I mean, he could have gone for mechanized agriculture, but he has the ocean liner service, irrigation already developed. There's no Red Cross in the game, so maybe it's fine to just skip that here. And he goes for Churchill. Uses Churchill to develop the cannons, getting additional resources and science out of him, takes the revolutionary idea and develops the strategy, making him the strongest, and it looks like maybe he wants to build up a little bit of military. Brightfuture seeds here and opens the prosperity, but not the most prosperous times. 2 players actually gain 0 food out of that, and Brightfuture only gets 2. So not a very impactful event here. What is somewhat impactful is that Brightfuture gets the first copy of military theory here. I do think that helps him a lot for his stability for the military. Sadly, he also gets Pierre, and I was a bit worried. He actually develops the team sports as well. So he can do it for only 3 science, stealing 1 science from me. With Newton, that's maybe fine. He can then build a team sports, gets a bit more strength, a more efficient happy phase solution. Then goes for Bier, goes up to 8 culture production, goes for 1 more coal upgrade. And yeah, at this point I was a bit worried. Brightfuture now in the strength lead, also in the lead in culture production with the Olympic Games, basically has already overtaken me as a solid economy still. And I was a bit worried that getting PR plus military theory gives him just quite a big boost here. Now it's my turn, and I actually decided against pushing here, not wanting to commit to the impact of happiness for now. I'm the weakest at the moment, so I could get punished for pushing. I decided to keep the scientific cooperation pact. Brightfuture has now used some science. He probably can't develop more than one tech at his next turn, and I can make use of the pact once this turn, and with the Rev idea still have the potential to maybe then go for 2 more techs relatively soon. And as you can see, I just went for the oil this turn. I thought about some other things, just building a professional sports, taking some yellows, maybe taking the fast food chains. All of those things could be fine, but I also thought all of those are not really giving me a very big boost. I think I didn't have knowledge about economic progress, and both of my opponents, especially Brightfuture, certainly could have thought about putting that into the deck, so that might still be in there. And so at the end I thought, yeah, why not go for oil? Hopefully with the Rev idea I have enough science to still go for other relevant things, and then I just have more resources to work with later on in the game, meaning I can wait with maybe making commitments either into military or into maybe just going for some culture buildings. Arne, who knows, might continue building up some strength. Brightfuture is at 20 strength at the moment, so I do think it's maybe nice having the option to delay my commitment, just investing into upgrades, having then the same amount or more resources later in the game, and then being able to commit them instead of maybe having to go for a commitment earlier. So I go for 2 oil upgrades, going up to 13 resource production, which I think is quite strong. Then I have 2 civil actions left. I could have gone for 1 upgrade less and then also gone for professional sports, but I just wanted to get both upgrades going. And then I played the military build up for 10 additional resources, increased my population, built a rifleman, a knight, revealed the tactic, making sure that I'm the strongest for now, wasting 2 resources but still playing the yellow card for 8 resources, still completely fine. And so at the end this turn felt relatively clean to me. I draw War of Culture actually. Arne seeds, the popularization of science is revealed, giving Brightfuture the most culture. Arne uses Churchill to again develop technology, this time the rifleman, which could be an indicator that he actually has already a fitting tactic for those riflemen. Plays the wave of nationalism for 6 resource, has a lot of additional resource to work with, builds 2 cannons, and he indeed has a tactic. The positional army is at 28 strength, and with that, things could certainly get quite dangerous, especially if Arne should get the Air Force at some point. Also, as we can see, he also is now willing to take the professional spots for 3 civil actions, making sure that he has a happy face solution. Now it's Brightfuture's turn, he doesn't see it, instead goes for the rockets. Maybe also an indicator that he has a tactic already, or maybe he just wants to threaten something. He then increases his population, builds a rocket, builds another arena, going up to 10 culture production, being at 27 strength now, takes the patriotism, the urban growth, and the democracy. Now it is my turn. I was a bit worried about this strength that Arne especially is building up, and with the potential that he might be having with the positional army. And with that, I was extremely relieved when I, during this turn, saw the Air Forces drop, because with my classic army, I think that will help me a lot, having those Air Forces potentially, making sure that I can defend myself, also taking the first copy away from Arne. So I was very, very happy seeing that. And this turn I actually decided to push, which could be a mistake, but also somewhat understandable, because as you can see, 22 cards are left. There might not be that many turns left for me, probably 3 more turns including this one. And with my oil mines, I at least have the potential to maybe make some impacts relatively good. I can maybe work towards specific impacts and make them good. And with that, I at the end decided to push the impact of happiness already, as I thought the professional sports are just such nice buildings, especially with having the architecture help a lot of impacts, that I might just want to build 2 of them anyway. Nonetheless, I don't know whether I will build 2 of them. Brightfuture already has a lot of happy face, so against him it's not really a great impact. I thought against Arne it might be, because maybe he will only go for 1 professional sports and then he could be missing some happy faces. And as I don't have that many politics actions left, I decided to push here. But the issue is also that I am vulnerable to some events. I'm the weakest, so I could get hit by strength events. I have an unhappy worker, so I could get hit by happy face related events. At least I have knowledge about the civil unrest. So I'm not sure if it is the correct decision. A reason why I wanted to see it here is also that at the end of this turn I will actually be the strongest. In the next event deck there is the international negotiations. Those are coming. There could be other strength events, so maybe it could be nice to, when I get strongest this turn anyway, make sure that the event deck has flipped, so that there's maybe a chance that the international negotiations are revealed immediately. With that, I think it's maybe a fine decision, but maybe it could have been also fine to not push here. But I decided to push, and I do get punished here. The immigration is revealed. I lose a population. Arne also loses one, at least, but I think for me the population hurts a bit, and also with having one less population, it gets a bit more tricky to maybe have the second population for professional sports available in time to make that impact of happiness good for me. So I'm not sure if that was really worth the seat here. I certainly want to take the Air Forces this turn, increase my population, build a professional sports, getting stronger. Before the immigration was revealed, I had the option to, with having an additional population, just build a professional sports and the rifleman still having one civil action left, so that I could take the reserves, which I then probably could have maybe played for food at one of the following turns. But now if I want to get strongest instead of weakest, I kinda have to increase my population with my last civil action in order to build another rifleman. So I sadly don't get any of those yellow cards, but at least I am the strongest right now. I sadly also don't have the civil actions to take any of those wonders, but at least there are still some wonders left, even though Hollywood and Internet could end up being a bit tricky. I then draw some cards. The impact of Harmony and Wonders I was quite happy about it. Wonders is definitely seedable. Harmony maybe I can work towards. Arne seeds, and I now, after getting punished with the immigration, also get somewhat rewarded for going for my play of seeding Impact of Happiness, because thanks to that, the Politics of Strength is revealed now. Brightfuture missing out on some draws, while I get 5 additional ones. The question is how useful those are. At least I have a defense card, Impact of Strength, maybe, even though I thought Arne, if he continues building up some strength, could be difficult to seed that against him. So maybe not the most exciting draws for me, but at least a tactic that I can maybe work with, even though positional army that I can copy is probably better anyway. But yeah, maybe I can make something with Impact of Strength, but probably not the most exciting draws, but at least I have got an Impact of Wonders and Harmony, which are maybe potentially useful at my draw before. Also, Arne gets now the second copy of Air Forces, very relevant potentially, because without that, maybe it could be difficult for him to go for a big enough military push. If he has a wall ready and he had some additional draws with the strategic territory, then he might be able to really go for a big amount of strength with the Air Forces, and without maybe not. Brightfuture is now the player who missed out in the Air Forces, which could end up being a bit dangerous for him. I have the Michi Castle also, which now could end up being very helpful for me. Arne takes the Air Forces. This turn uses Churchill for 3 culture. He probably doesn't really need the additional resources and can maybe use them again at the next turn when he maybe wants to develop Air Forces. He then actually destroys a farm, builds a cannon, making maybe use out of his military actions nicely. He's at 39 strength, takes some yellow cards, plays the endowment for 6 culture. Culture-wise, the situation is still quite close. Brightfuture for the moment has taken the lead, also with having declared the Olympic Games at his last turn. Brightfuture will then take the internet with Pierre, that can certainly be quite strong, so he just makes sure to have a wonder available, plays the patriotism, builds another rocket, takes the urban growth, the satellites, and then copies to the positional army, meaning if he gets one of the 2 copies of modern infantry, maybe he can make use out of the tactic, and potentially, of course, he also could have drawn the modern army tactic at this point. Now it is my turn, and I actually decided against pushing here. And I think the reason for that was, first of all, at the moment, the only really good impact or seedable impact is the impact of wonders. Maybe I should just put it into the decks, but one of the remaining 2 events is the international negotiations, and at this point, I didn't want to pay any of those things necessarily, and also I will be the strongest instead of the weakest after my turn. Arne is not in a position to go for a war yet, so he might potentially see it, and I was hoping that maybe I can just avoid getting hit by that event and potentially even win that event if I don't push right now. If I would have had another solid impact, I would have just pushed, but like this I decided to wait with pushing, and then this turn I will increase my population, go for the air forces, build one, going up to 42 strength, and then I will take the revolutionary idea, which could be very important to have, so that I can at least get one more tech going. And also I had to consider what leader I would like to go for, because if I don't take any of those that are on the road and only Bill Gates is left, who isn't really doing anything for me, one copy of computers will already be gone. I could of course take that, but building up computers that late only for Bill Gates is maybe not that great. Also there's the space flight coming down the row, and the Hollywood, which are the last two remaining wonders. I can't really take the space flight this turn. Arne might potentially take it away, as Hollywood isn't really a wonder that he can use. Maybe he doesn't go for the space flight and I still have a chance to take it at the next turn, but it could happen that the Hollywood is the only wonder that I could potentially go for, and with that I actually decided to go for Fleming in the movies here. Because even if I don't get the Hollywood, at least it's a leader that potentially scores me a little bit of culture during maybe the last two turns, or maybe even only the last turn, because maybe at the next turn I won't be in a position where I already can commit into movies. And in case the space flight is taken away, at least maybe I can still go for the Hollywood. Now the oil mines could be coming in handy. I can save up a lot of resources and still maybe make a decent Hollywood despite having not gone for any movies or multimedias for the moment. And I also took the movies over the multimedias, because I thought if I indeed go for Fleming in movies, then I just want to have more culture production. Movies give more culture for the Hollywood, and also the impact of happiness is coming. And maybe if I just build movies and not a second professional sports, then also those will score me more for that impact. I keep some impacts, draw 3 new cards, actually 3 new impacts, so I have a lot of impact knowledge right now. All of those impacts, though, are not really that nicely playable for me. Impact of government, maybe impact of progress, depending on what I get, but at the moment, none of those I can really push, but at least I have knowledge about them. Arne sadly doesn't see it. I was hoping that he maybe would see it here, but he decides against it. Maybe doesn't, or likely doesn't have a good impact, because otherwise he wouldn't have gone for that blunder only to maybe remove one card from Brightfuture. He does take the space flight here, meaning Hollywood is the last wonder that I can get. He develops the professional sports, builds one, and then also makes sure to build a rifleman, first of all to get out of corruption, but also it could be very important for him to spend a military action already, because now he's in a position where he could declare war, and then with the remaining 3 military actions he could build one more rifleman, 2 air forces, and then the next turn he is quite threatening and can go quite a bit over 90 strength actually. So I have to be very careful, and yeah, I have to see how I can play my next turn. Brightfuture takes the modern infantry this turn, could end up being a very important technology for him. He increases his population 2 times, takes the reserves to have more resources to work with, plays the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus, can then play the reserves with the Silk Road bonus at the next turn, builds the modern infantry, another modern infantry. That he builds both of those could also be a sign that he has the modern army tactic available. However, he doesn't reveal it yet, which is interesting, because I do think if he would have it in hand, it could be in his interest to reveal it already, just showing Arne that he has it available, so that Arne isn't maybe intrigued by the idea that Brightfuture might only have positional army available. And he is missing resources to go for building 2 rockets and going for 2 upgrades, so he can't go for full 2 positional armies, but he could go for 2 full modern armies, so it makes quite a bit of a difference for his strength potential. He could of course still draw it now, because I think the politics of strength, the draws that he was missing from there, he lost already at the turn before. So I guess he has the tactic not in hand right now. Maybe he's want to keep it as a surprise, but I don't think it's a situation where you want to keep that as a surprise, because even with revealing the tactic, he would still lose the war. So I think it would be in his interest to make him more threatening, and with that I thought he maybe doesn't have the modern army tactic available, but of course has a chance to draw it now in his last 3 draws. I was happy to see that he only took 2 cards from the row, meaning I have 1 more turn in H3. And this turn was a little bit of a puzzle, and my decision to seed I also had to really think about if I want to go for that, as it might heavily depend on the turn that I would like to go for. And ideally, I would like to go for a turn here where I am ideally completely safe, or as safe as possible. But I also want to be in a position to score as much culture as possible at the next turn, which would be possible with the Hollywood. And I first thought about that maybe the classic army tactic is not enough to make me completely safe, so I thought I need to go for cannons, copy the positional army tactic, do some investments, but then I have only resources left to go for 1 movie in Hollywood, which is probably fine, but also not really that great. Then I thought about what if I don't invest into 2 cannons and just do less investments and leave myself with enough resources to go for the Hollywood, maybe go for the military theory or something. But then I thought that maybe I still threaten enough strength that Arne would choose still Brightfuture as the target instead of me, but if Brightfuture has the modern army, he can go for a solid amount of strength, and so I thought it might be too risky. And at the end I think I found the best solution, but that solution, generally the ability of me of going for the Hollywood, might completely be destroyed by the international negotiations that I've pushed into the deck earlier. There are 2 events left. I thought about not pushing, then if Arne goes for a war, it's a 50-50 if Brightfuture seeds, if the international negotiations are revealed or not. However, at the end I decided that now, if I can decide what I lose, it's somewhat fine for me, so I decided to rather make it the 50-50 the other way around, making it a 50-50 shot that the international negotiations is revealed right now, so that I can decide what to lose. It would still be quite costly, because I will lose 3 food and then I will destroy a farm instead of just increasing my population, but I thought that it might be worth it, because I can then push an impact right now and I still have the option to push another impact depending on what I draw. So I at the end decided to push, but if the international negotiations are not revealed, it could be bad, because Brightfuture hasn't pushed a single impact so far. It's likely that he might just push one at his turn, and if then the international negotiations are revealed, he can just remove completely the option to go for the Hollywood from me. And as you can see, sadly no international negotiations revealed, at least I don't have to destroy my farm, but if Brightfuture seeds, which I was very afraid of, then I might not be able to go for that Hollywood, but I still thought it's worth it to go for the same setup, as there's at least a chance that Brightfuture might not push. And so I built a cannon. I developed the cannons. I thought that in order to be completely safe from a war, I need to threaten the positional army tactic, and I also need to build 1 unit. First of all, it gets me out of corruption, but I also need to spend at least that 1 military action already right now, and then I can take the military theory in the Hollywood, and I think like this it generally works quite nicely, if only the international negotiations wouldn't be there. But without them, it works very nicely here, because at the next turn I can play the revolutionary idea and develop the military theory. I have exactly enough science for that. I will now lose the scientific operation pact, so that will cost me 11 science at the next turn. And then I can copy to the positional army tactic, which costs me 2 military actions, and then I have exactly 5 left to build 1 rifleman, 3 cannons, 1 air force. I have enough resources to do that, and with that I'm threatening enough strength that I could win a war against Arne, so I should be completely safe from a war, because Arne of course can't play around that the international negotiations that he doesn't have knowledge about might be revealed, and that Brightfuture might take the science away from me to go for the military theory, so I should be safe from a war here. And if Arne then either goes for no war or a war against Brightfuture, and I thought it's likely that he will go for a war, then I have now, with only having invested into 1 cannon but not into 2, I have 34 resources, which is exactly enough to go for the Hollywood and 2 movies. So I can actually go for quite a bit of culture production and a solid wonder in case I don't get hit by a war. The only big issue being, if Brightfuture has any impact to push, the international negotiations are revealed, he can just take the signs away from me. I can't go for any movies, and also, of course, then not for the Hollywood. I still went for the setup because I was hoping that even if he reveals that event and takes the science away, with him losing the war and me maybe at least then being able to prepare for some impacts, that I hopefully have still a shot at finishing second. And I kind of wanted to play leave myself options open for the first place here, and I do think that is the best way to do it, even though I might just not be able to go for the movies. Relatively likely if Brightfuture has any impact to see it. I get 1 more draw, potentially drawing an impact. Impact of population is sadly not that great, so I might have to work with one of the ones that I have in hand. H4 starts, and Arne will indeed go for war, actually a hybrid war against Brightfuture. He will use Churchill, goes for air forces, builds a rifleman, an air force, another air force, destroys the religion, builds a professional sports, plays the reserves, goes for an upgrade to his farms to not have any famine issues, and at the next turn with 11 resources plus the engineering genius has exactly enough to be able to finish the space flight, is at 99 strength and goes for a big war. He probably would have preferred to go for a normal war over culture. I do think it looks like he doesn't have one in hand, because he could have had the military action for that, and Brightfuture doesn't really get any damage by the loss of the happy faces. So it looks like he has only a hybrid war available, and that was good news for me, as that might mean that he gets 5 less culture out of the war. But in case Brightfuture seeds now, it could also be bad news for me, because then Brightfuture loses 5 less culture, making it maybe more likely that I could end up finishing last, potentially. So now I was really excited to see what Brightfuture will do with his politics phase. If he seeds, I have to be afraid of finishing last. If he doesn't seed, I might have a shot at finishing first, potentially. And I was very happy to see here that he actually offers a military alliance for me. That is basically the perfect outcome. He doesn't seed, but he even does something that will take more culture away from Arne. And I was very happily willing to accept this military alliance pact. Now I was also interested to see whether Brightfuture has the modern army tactic available. He plays the reserves with the Silk Road bonus, destroys some things, builds a modern infantry, builds another modern infantry, and he indeed has the modern army tactic, is now at 77 strength, goes for another upgrade, is now at 81 strength, develops the satellites, is at 84 strength, can upgrade an arena with the urban growth, is now at 85 strength, and now with that I was extremely happy how things have developed here. The international negotiations haven't been revealed. Arne only has gone for a hybrid war, and Brightfuture has the tactic and had the military alliance, meaning that Arne actually doesn't get that many culture out of that war. He can of course still finish the space flight, so he will still score quite a good amount of points. He can also potentially play an aggression against me, but my hopes of potentially finishing first certainly increased with those actions. At my turn I ceded the impact of Harmony, because that impact has the potential to be quite strong now against Arne, because he has only 2 urban buildings and he has only enough resources to finish the space flight, so then his Harmony could be quite bad, and with how I play the turn I can actually make my Harmony up to 20 with deleting some military units and putting those into the movies, so that impact has quite some potential. It could get better for Arne though if he gets some additional resources out of an aggression. If he has a blunder, he can maybe build 2 more urban buildings in addition to finishing spaceflight. And the worst case could be if he has a raid, because then he could also build additional urban buildings and destroy urban buildings from me. In that case, the impact of Harmony would be bad for me even, but I was definitely willing to take that risk. Then, yeah, this turn is relatively clear. First of all, I had to lose something for the international negotiations. I paid food because I need all of the resources and all of the science. I can elect Fleming. I can go for the movies. I can disband a knight and a rifleman. I couldn't have defended against an aggression anyway, and I have knowledge about impact of strength, so I can also just disband those units, making sure that I keep one in every unit type for the impact of variety. And then I can build a movie, another movie, going up to 17 culture production, and then finish the Hollywood for at least 22 points, which I think is quite solid. So that at the end, going for flaming movies in Hollywood gave me the opportunity here to still score some points. And then I take the last technology away from the row, the engineering, and copy the phalanx tactic to get a bit more strength. One of the raids I had in hand, so I was hoping that Arne doesn't have the second copy, otherwise that would be a very big swing. So I was interested to see what he will do with this politics phase. First of all, of course, he will steal some culture from Brightfuture, but as you can see, for the moment, he is still less culture in Brightfuture, but of course, he will now score some with the space flight and potentially with his politics phase. He does have an aggression. It's a 14 culture swing, so it's not ideal for me, but also not the worst case with him having raid. So I was not happy because it's still maybe one of the potentially more bad things, but on the other hand, he also had a lot of draws during H3, especially with the strategic territory, so I was more happy than unhappy, even though that's still a 14 culture swing, which could end up being quite bad for me. But it means that his impact of harmony will stay quite weak. He finishes the spaceflight this turn for 23 points, and then can't really do anything else, meaning before the final impacts. He has actually the lead at the moment, is 12 culture before me, but I have some impacts, especially the impact of harmony, that might allow me to potentially come back, but it could still get quite tight. Impact of happiness is actually not that great for me right now. Will give Arne +2, impact of wonders only slightly better, so with my impacts we are relatively equal, and then I still need to overtake him with some neutral or with some impacts that my opponents have seeded, actually that Arne himself has seeded, so I still was thinking it might be a bit of a stretch to win this, but of course Arne, in order to go for this war, needed to destroy something, so there's at least some hope here. The first impact is the impact of variety, and I was happy to see that. One of the impacts from Arne that is actually giving +2 for me. Then there's the impact of wonders, that was seeded by me, it gives me +1 against Arne, I'm catching up a little bit here. The impact of happiness was also seeded by me, that sadly didn't work out that nicely, and I lose 2 points to Arne again. Then there's the impact of harmony, that one turns out to be quite strong for me, and I'm actually able to be 1 point in front of Arne right now, but now there is still one of Arne's impacts remaining, so if he has any good impact for himself, he will overtake me again, but if he has a neutral one or even a slightly bad one, I might have a chance at actually winning this game, and with that remaining with chances for the promotion to Grandmaster. So let's see, what will the last impact be? It is the impact of industry. And with my all mines, I am actually able to stay in the lead here, and I am actually able to win this game at the end, which I was very happy about. I also didn't really expect it for the last few turns, because I thought with Arne going for that big war, getting spaceflight, it will be difficult to finish before him. Then the international negotiations weren't revealed at my second last turn. I thought Brightfuture likely has just something to seed, and then he will destroy my possibility of going for the Hollywood, and I might have even had to be afraid of potentially finishing last. But yeah, at the end it actually was enough to win this game, but only some small things had to be a bit different in order for Arne to win. For example, Arne wrote in the chat after the game that sadly he had only a hybrid war. With a normal war over culture, he would have stolen 5 additional culture from Brightfuture, and that already would be enough for him to win this game. So that's a bit unfortunate with the many draws that he has had. And also he made a bit of a mistake, or not a clear mistake, but maybe potentially in hindsight a mistake, and maybe also with the knowledge that he had potentially a misplay, because he has said that he actually had a raid in hand, but decided to go for the armed intervention. But he had the impact of variety himself, which he could make weaker for me potentially. And also the impact of harmony, I certainly played towards that during my last turns. You maybe could have seen that, of course, at the end maybe there could be a different impact in harmony, but it's one of my big impacts. So if he would have gone for that raid, he didn't have knowledge about what impacts I've seeded, so if there would have been different impacts by me, maybe the armed intervention could have been the better call, but with the impacts that were in there, if he would have gone for a raid and would have been able to build some urban buildings himself while removing urban buildings from me, increasing his variety and harmony while destroying my harmony and also variety, if he destroys the professional sports, with that he also would have been able to win. So it was on razor's edge for me, but yeah, at the end I was actually able to win this. Also, if you remember the last game, it's actually crazy how similar Arne's position is in this game compared to my position in the last game. If you don't remember exactly how my position was in the last game, you can maybe quickly look back at the last video and take a look at that, because we both were playing in third position. We both went for building up towards positional army with riflemen, cannons and air forces. We both had Churchill. We both had professional sports. We both won a strategic territory too early in Age 2. We both, despite winning this strategic territory early in Age 2, only had a hybrid war to work with. We both declared that hybrid war in the second last turn against the first position player, and at the end we both finished second at the end because the player that we didn't target finished a Hollywood and at the end managed to win the game. So that's somewhat crazy. There are a lot of similarities. So yeah, that was kind of crazy how many similarities there are, and those games were ongoing for me and equally quickly. So both of those positions were basically at the same time. Arne was of course not part of the other game, so he didn't see it, but I just thought, wow, that's kind of crazy how similar those positions are. Brightfuture, I do think, again, like also in one of the other games that we've seen from him in the season, got a bit unlucky, or quite a bit unlucky here with the Air Force timing. He still managed to pull off a very good defense, but without Air Force it's just hard, of course, to stay competitive. So yeah, for him, some things definitely have gone in an unfortunate way for him. Generally, he had built up a solid position here, and if he maybe gets the Air Forces, or if maybe Arne doesn't go for that military push, he could be in a position to just win the game, but like this, at the end, loses the game, so definitely unfortunate for him. And yeah, I definitely also a bit of a fortunate win for me with all that needed to happen in order for me to not finish at the second place. But with the win, there is a hope that I could actually get promoted to Grandmaster now. But it just depends on the outcome of the last game where I'm not involved. I need to hope that Danny Boy finishes at the last position, and as that is quite an exciting moment, I think maybe it could be nice to just quickly take a look at the final impact scoring of that one game where I wasn't involved. Alright, so here we are at the end of the last game of the Intermezzo Championship season. We can take a quick look at the different civilizations. Danny Boy seems to have a very great economy, some hussars, a good impact of progress potentially, and the impact, the wonders we can't really see, but he built the Manhattan Project. Brightfuture actually lost their Meiji Castle, but I think that actually just happened right now. Wasn't able to finish the space flight. Arne has Mandela and a lot of team sports, and culture-wise, it's actually very, very close. So let's see how the final impacts will evolve, and if maybe Danny Boy finishes last in that game. The first impact, sadly, isn't good for that to happen. The impact of industry is giving Danny Boy quite a lot of points. Then there's the impact of happiness, which is plus 16 for Danny Boy, Arne, and plus 14 for Brightfuture. The next impact is the impact of architecture, also a solid one for Danny Boy, so it looks like he might just win that game, and it looks very unlikely that he might lose that game. There is now the impact of competition, however, and Arne is scoring a lot of that in that impact. It's actually overtaking Danny Boy. Sadly, Brightfuture isn't scoring that much, so maybe the Arne will now actually overtake Danny Boy, but that Danny Boy loses the game seems to be quite unlikely. And the last impact is actually the impact of variety, Brightfuture is able to catch up with that, but at the end Danny Boy is able to win this game. And we will also take a look at the standings in a minute, but with that you of course also know already that he is now the player who wins the group and is able to advance to the Grandmaster division, so big congratulations for him. I think it's the first time that he goes to Grandmaster, so quite a strong and amazing achievement for him. And no, big congratulations, a very strong season. And no, quite a close end of the game. I think Danny Boy wrote me that if Brightfuture had an aggression that gave him additional resources, he might have been able to just finish the space flight, which could have maybe mixed things up a little bit more, but a Brightfuture maybe again being a bit unlucky and at the end finishing last in that game. Right, but now we will take a look at the final standings of the season. Alright, so here you can see the last games that have finished, and you can also see the great comeback that Danny Boy had, because if you remember, Danny Boy started with a loss, then only had a second position, so 2 points out of the first 2 games, but then he had 1 win, 2 wins, 3 wins, and now even the 4th win in a row, so had a very strong second half, or the last 2/3 of the season. And with that is now able to win the group. So again, congratulations to him, 22 points, a very strong season for him. And it will be interesting to see what he can do in Grandmaster next season. That, of course, for me, sadly means that I won't get promoted to Grandmaster. I will have to play another season in Master. But still, I'm mostly happy about my season. I think 19 points is a solid result. I mean, the last game that we saw, I think there I was fortunate to win. Then there were maybe some games like this one where Arne made this very nice comeback, where maybe I get a bit unfortunate. And also here maybe could have finished before Danny Boy, which could have made a big difference. But here, on the other hand, I got a bit lucky, so things could have gone a bit differently. But on the other hand, it was somewhat balanced. So at the end, I think 19 points is a solid result. Payada had a strong start into the season, so maybe had some hopes to promote to Grandmaster. Second half of the season didn't go that nicely for him, so he finishes at 16 points, but at least is able to stay in the league. Arne, if he would have won that last game, would be at 16 points as well. And then if I would finish second, there would actually be a 3-way tie at the end, so I didn't calculate how that would have worked at the end, but then all of the 3 of us potentially could have been relegated. Maybe Arne could have saved himself. So now for him, of course, it was also extremely close. As I said, if he only has a normal war instead of a hybrid war, then maybe he already could have saved himself, and one of potentially I or Payada would have gotten relegated. And then also, of course, the other last game, if maybe Arne would have managed to win this game, and the other game, he would have been even at 19 points and would have stayed in the league. So a very close season, not the best outcome for Arne, who sadly will now get relegated. And for Brightfuture, I think he had some unfortunate games, and overall the season, of course, didn't go very well for him. Alright, with that we are at the end of the season. We can maybe take a quick look at the Grandmaster division to just very quickly see how that league finished. And we can see that Todd Silence, for the second time in a row, was able to win the Grandmaster division, so big congratulations for him. Ipogi finishing closely behind him with 19 points. Grotz, I think maybe even in his first Grandmaster season, managed to at least stay in the league with a solid amount of 15 points, while Lech and Gandin get relegated. So Todd Silence being in a very strong 3-player form at the moment. Alright, with that we are at the end of the Intermezzo Championship season. I hope it was interesting for you following me along through that season. I think there were some interesting games among the ones that I played. And then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.